Good afternoon, friends. It's my pleasure and privilege to welcome you all for this distinguished lecture series on energy efficiency organized by CII Green Business Center. Apart from several of the other activities which the CII Green Business Center has been taking up, one of the newer initiatives which we have started is in terms of initiating this distinguished lecture series. The objective is to inspire and lead the Indian industry to achieve world-class levels of energy efficiency. So we are starting the distinguished lecture series today. It will be in the format of a tech talk with about 20 to 30 minutes of lecture by a very senior professional from the industry. And another unique thing which you have added is to have a question and answer session for about 20 minutes so that the viewers are also able to share their knowledge as well as ask for additional information from the speaker. So all the lectures would be made available permanently for posterity in the web. This will be like a TED talk, which is available always for all of us to view further if you miss one of them. So we will have this talk on the first Monday between 4 and 5 p.m. In the months to come. Every month we will have one distinguished lecture talk between 4 p.m. and 5 p.m. on the first Monday of every month. Having said that, we will go to the first lecture which is going to happen today. Kapil Dev once said that he's privileged to demonstrate his commitment as a captain because he has an opportunity of leading the team by bowling first. Similarly, we have our chairman, Mr. Ravichandran, who has offered to be the first speaker of this distinguished lecture series. Mr. Ravichandran Purushothaman is the chairman of Energy Efficiency Council of the Green Business Center. Thank you, Mr. Ravi, for agreeing to be the first speaker for this distinguished lecture series. Mr. Ravichandran Purushothaman is the president of Danfoss. He has been leading Danfoss in India for last 7 to 8 years of time. He has experience of more than 30 years in areas of electrical and energy efficiency. Apart from all that, which you see in the data of Mr. Ravichandran Purushothaman, he is a person who is practicing extensively energy efficiency in the factory, the manufacturing factories which are under his direct control. And secondly, he is one of the most well-known speakers on energy efficiency in the entire country. And thirdly, he has another unique distinction of being a person who is involved with a company which is supplying energy efficient equipment, which is helping the larger Indian industry to become more and more energy efficient. And lastly, Mr. Ravichandran is also involved in promoting more and more innovations by being a mentor to several of the startups in the areas of clean tech and energy efficiency. We are extremely honored and privileged to have such a distinguished person, a person who has extraordinary experience in the subject which he is going to talk about to open the distinguished lecture series on energy efficiency. Without much further ado, may I request Mr. Ravichandran to take over and deliver his lecture, please. Mr. Ravi, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Venkatagiri, and thank you, Kiran. Greetings and good evening to everyone on this first seminar organized by CII GBC. I think I have to confess, Venkatagiri, I'm actually in a green zone, but in a red city. So I'm not really sitting in a green building as probably you are sitting actually. But I'm really looking forward to this conversation this afternoon. And I hope all of you on the call are staying safe and keeping up the fighting spirits, during this crisis. I think at an outset, let me on behalf of CII and also GBC and the Energy Efficiency Council thank all the energy warriors who have been keeping this country tickling for many, many weeks actually. At hospitals, at grids, at power stations, at data centers, and many more. And also ensuring that a stable grid while the nation switched off lights to thank the Corona warriors. I think we thank each and every energy champion. And I think this is really a remarkable thing that we have, experienced in the last few weeks. Now, I think moving on to this topic, first let me congratulate CII GBC for bringing up this novel idea for a monthly series of energy efficiency talk. I think where we probably will get a chance to listen in to thought leaders who would probably share a lot about the energy efficiency and the potential it offers for India. I think I'm very glad to start the topic as the chair of the council, and also really look forward to today's engaging and stimulating session, and also in the forthcoming months ahead. I think we all are, collectively responsible for reshaping the country. And in fact, we all need to guide this country into a new path when we return to a new normal. I think as regards to the topic today, I think the format that I have chosen is that I have been requested to share my thoughts for about 20-25 minutes. And then I would probably have Kiran help me out with the Q&A session. Before I start, I will just kind of share my my computer, because I'm going to be led by a few slides which I put together as I hope you can see the slides. Yeah.
Yes, sir, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. So, I mean, when we look at where are we today in the world, I mean, these are really very testing times for all of us. I think the world is in lockdown, and I think COVID-19 pandemic has massively disrupted the global economy, forcing large parts of the world into confinement, and also creating largest shocks to global energy system, which we haven't witnessed for more than 70 years, 7 decades actually. I think it is estimated as recently as last week that the global energy demand has declined by 6% actually. And I think one of the telling aspects of this pandemic is that the fall compared to 2008 is actually 7 times greater. So this is a much bigger crisis we have on the energy side as well. But I think there are also, seen some learnings out of what we have experienced the last few weeks. And there's also some positive stories that are unfolding from the lockdown. While many of the economies, especially service economies, they have seen a huge drop. Coal, oil, and gas, I think the demand has probably fallen between 6 to 8%. But there's a good news, and the good news really is that the renewables are holding up, and I think they haven't really seen the drop actually. And when the whole world was under lockdown, I think the renewables were more or less contributing to 40% of the energy demand across the world. So I think this is a very, very positive story for us when we kind of look back at where we want to head in the future as well. And as many of you may be aware, even in India, we have seen, at least where I am living in Chennai, I'm able to see more birds. I'm able to see, far more activity in the sky, even though the planes are not flying. So it kind of tells that, nature is healing. And I think someone sent me a WhatsApp from Delhi that they could even see Himalayas from Jalandhar. It's kind of very clear that there is a correlation between climate change and energy. And I think this is exactly what I wanted to share here. I think as companies and countries plan revival, the question in everyone's mind, what is the priority for us? The obvious is, of course, people's safety, and how do we ensure that everybody's jobs are saved? The other thing is about while the energy production has decreased, I think the focus on energy efficiency and energy productivity is only going to increase, because these are two important ingredients for cash flows for business and for economies. Another visible aspect during the lockdown, I think in my own learning is that there there are technologies that are kind of unfolding, which people are willing to experiment as well. So these are all very, very positive for us. But I think it's also critical for us to understand how can we solve the twin challenges which lies in front of us. How can we solve them in a manner that we take care of both the challenges, which is in terms of economic recovery post the lockdown, and also the recovery that brings in a higher environmental resilience. I think this is something we need a fine balance, and this is exactly one of the learnings we have also from the COVID experience. I think if there is a battle of the species, we need to win this and live another day, another year, maybe another century. And for that, to me, energy efficiency and sustainability has a very pivotal role in not only helping us navigate where we are, but I also believe that we can make a great living out of this opportunity. I think when you look into India, my computer seems to be stuck here, so yeah. So when you look into India, what you see here is a graph of the drop in different countries. And when the world was under lockdown, while many governments wanted to flatten the curve, and primarily, as many of you may know, flattening is more like postponing the problem, because the only vaccine that we all know is only one thing available is the drug, and the vaccines are really far away, but the one little vaccine that we have is social distancing. And given the kind of wave the pandemic has been hitting us in different parts of the world, I think we have seen different learnings from the lockdown as well. And when it comes to India, I think I want to share with you some numbers that were put out very recently. I think we have roughly about 400 gigawatts of installed capacity in India. And I think in lockdown 2.0, we were almost like 25% down. But I think another important thing we need to recognize is that close to 100 gigawatts on top of the 400 gigawatts was some of the machines that went silent, which was the diesel generating sets actually. So this clearly kind of gives us, the spectrum of where we are. We also believe that in the last 2 to 3 weeks, we kind of see that there is a huge increase in the demand for residential. Of course, residential is something which quite a bit of change is going to happen in the future. But I also believe the bandwidth and the internet service providers are working tirelessly to keep the internet working at residential places actually. I think these are all, some things which we need to be cognizant of when we kind of relook at how we want to evolve in the future. Now, I know sometime back, the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, I think they've done a remarkable work. Having said that, I think we need to acknowledge the fact that this country has made remarkable progress the last 2 decades, ever since the energy efficiency program was started in the late 90s. I think if you look at what as a country we have achieved, and also I think GBC is epitomizes the kind of work that they have been doing here. I think we have the finest cement plants, the most energy efficient cement plants in the world actually today. So I think on one side, we really have done pretty well in some sectors, but that also gives me hope that this pandemic is going to be a huge opportunity for us. And when we come out of this, I have some thoughts of how we can reshape the Indian energy space as well. When I look at, we have a robust plan in place from BEE, but I think one of the things, if you see here, that the world is offering us today, I got a little bit inspired about what's happening on the regulatory side today, actually. I think electricity is very closely related to a lot of regulatory stuff as far as most nations are concerned. But this is a time where actually we can push the regulator to a level where they can give us huge amount of space to deploy more and more technology, actually. And when you look at these, the roadmap that BE has placed in front of us, I think decarbonization drive is one of the prime movers of this whole transformation that they're looking at, the 1.5 degree reduction in temperature and the climate change. decentralization. I think we are probably moving more and more into decentral electricity. We are looking at more and more disruptive innovations, especially that would come using technologies like AI, blockchain, digital twins. I'm going to talk about some few examples of what that can help us both in buildings as well as in industry. And of course, how do we relentlessly focus on efficiency? And I think we are all moving to a world, I think, in my view, where the definition of who is a producer and who is a consumer is getting merged actually, because a home can be also a producer, an industry can also be a producer, an individual also can be a producer. I think so. We need to recognize these facts, but I think we have a very solid plan. And when I was kind of going through this plan, I felt that BE has really provided us a great cafeteria of options. But the question is, should we wait for 2027 or should we look at fast forwarding them actually? And in my view, I strongly believe that this is an opportunity where, like they say, in the midst of every crisis, there lies an opportunity. And I think what Corona has done to these plans, to me, as I see it, we will see some of these plans being probably advanced in the next 3 to 5 years. Proliferation of energy and energy efficiency centric solutions will be hastened, because I'm sure the opportunity that companies are going to be faced with in the future is going to be only solved through these kind of initiatives. Look at edge computing. I mean, today you can run hospital from a cloud actually. So I think this is going to be something which will inspire even the energy space going forward. And that's where I believe that technology and also the opportunity that we have right now kind of should be, utilized for rebuilding the future. So what I have done is I've kind of put together some thoughts of how should we look ahead outside when we come out of this crisis. This is a kind of a recipe that I have where I think the pivotal role, of course, is with the government and, of course, the regulator as part of it. But I think there are 4 key stakeholders here because, when we get out of this crisis, energy would be very different from what we have seen in the past, in my view. So let me start with the first one, which is the government. I think we are due for a new Electricity Act. I say this for 2 reasons. One, I think the technology and the proliferation of technology in the energy industry requires a huge revamp of the infrastructure, be it an energy meter or be it an equipment in a factory or a building. And I think we are seeing more and more software is eating into most of our spaces. And I think technology is becoming a resource liberating force. I think we've already seen EESL has demonstrated that, in terms of an LED bulb. So I think we really need to look at how can we use the Electricity Act to help us actually take advantage of technology. I think the second important thing is that we need to look at is that I think today we are seeing more and more prosumers coming in the last 5 years in the economy. So we kind of have an Electricity Act where you have the federal mechanism, but we also need to look at how do you promote more and more prosumers who are also producers and who are more consumers. I think if we take that path, in my view, we are going to see huge amount of opportunities for carbon neutrality. And I think that's the only way we can look forward and kind of disrupt some of the challenges that we have when it comes to sustainability goals, actually. The second, the biggest initiative the government should look at is that when they come out with the stimulus program, and in my view, we should take the lesson from what the US did in 2008, actually. When US came out of the financial crisis, they used energy efficiency stimulus programs, which kind of created more than 200,000 jobs. And they also came up with funding to deploy newer technologies. So I think, when government is looking at stimulus in the future, this should be one of the important impediments that we need to take advantage of. The third is, if you look at the building codes, I mean, we've always had this challenge in deployment of building codes, but I think in the pandemic situation, we have seen how collaborative, the central governments and the state governments have been in tackling COVID. And I think this is also a good example of how we can leverage these kind of collaborative initiatives and look at how do we deploy building codes, which has been a significant challenges in the states, even though the regulatory bodies are sitting in the central side. I mean, deploying this is also very important because this is the only way we can get more energy productivity out of our assets and out of our infrastructure, and look at how do we build sustainable cities for the future. So I think finally, of course, sometime by 2030, 2035, we should look at how do we move our economy and what kind of policy initiatives that will be propelled on the circular economy. Because one of the challenges we have also seen with the pandemic is that there's going to be a lot of waste generation that is happening. And how do we make sure that this whole circular economy, long-term sustainability is also becoming a very important thing, given the kind of viruses we have seen. And there's no guarantee that we are not going to see future viruses. So therefore, we need to look at how we can evolve as a nation towards the circular economy and also keep the cost, at an affordable level for all parts of the society, actually. So I think these are 3 or 4 of my very, very high themes when it comes to the government. Now, let me pick on what should we do in driving and accelerating deep digital decarbonization. I think social distancing, I'm running a supply chain sitting in Chennai, Baroda, and Pune, and we clearly have seen that we are not able to restart. And it's last 2 weeks we have been working on redesigning our shop floor, redesigning our supply chain. We have to provide the 1.5 feet, 1.5 meter kind of distance between 2 workstations. And I think the whole redesigning due to social distancing, because social distancing is going to be staying here for next 3 to 5 years at least. I'm not very optimistic that we all will be having a drug or a vaccine. Therefore, how do we take, when we do this, how do we actually also, dovetail energy efficiency is something we need to think about, because you are going to have a challenge with energy productivity when you redesign the buildings. The other thing is, sometimes when I look at the number of hotels we have, and given the fact that there are going to be less people traveling, and some of the social distancing has limitations for a mall or a hotel, we also need to redesign these buildings for meaningful purposes. Maybe they become future hospitals, or maybe they become quarantine centers, or what do I know? I mean, these are things where we will have to really, how to make the churn on asset utilization. So when we get into that, I think potentially what we should do is we should look at how do we keep the energy productivity under focus, because otherwise we run into the risk of an increasing demand on lesser space, actually. So that's something where I feel that a lot would be driven into that dimension. I think the second is, I'm a very big fan of a digital twin, actually. And when I talk about digital twin, I think it's not really the industry part, but also on the building information modeling, actually. Now, when you look at building information modeling, you take any existing building and compare it with an idealistic building and look at what are the potential opportunities we have. The entire building can be run from a cloud. So you really don't need anyone present in the building, actually. Given the technologies that we are having today, and as an example, I gave you that how if the NITI Aayog and the government of India can give you an approval for telemedicine at a stroke of 4 days, I think we have a great opportunity to move a lot of our buildings to cloud control. And we can actually do this smartly and take full advantage of decarbonization, because, we will kind of get layer by layer, we can peel the onion and really improve the energy efficiency of a building. So is the case with any industry, actually. I mean, whether it's a future industry, a pharmaceutical industry, or an FMCG industry, I think the digital twin, I mean, when you can apply a digital twin on a chilling equipment or a chiller in a hotel, we can also apply it on a large factory. So I believe in the immediate future, technology like blockchain, AR, VR, analytics, data science, all of this is only going to help us more and more move more things into the cloud, actually. And I think India has a very unique position where we have a very strong IT skill sets, a combination of domain expertise that is sitting in the energy sector. If we can actually promote more and more of this collaborative effort, I think we will have a great opportunity to take full advantage of decarbonizing our buildings. And I think we can be a big leader in this space globally. And tomorrow we could also export a lot of technologies out of India. I think on the other part in the industries, I think sustainability, waste and water becomes an important topic. I mean, on one side, there is a lot of expectation that we have to look at getting attractive to supply chains that can get disrupted and moved from China to India. But I think one of the things where Vietnam scores over India is the availability of fresh water, actually. And water has been a massive challenge for us across probably the 80 cities of India. So we really need to build sustainable technologies where we can protect ourselves against water, and this is an area where we have not really focused on. And I think for me, energy and water, they have very strong correlation, and therefore we need to look at how do we save water and how do we protect ourselves. And unless we do that, we are not going to attract long-term supply chains coming to India. Moving on a little bit into individuals, I see residential changes going to be dramatic in the next 3 to 5 years. Given the fact that the 5G will become the umbilical cord of the Indian economy, you will probably not have a difference whether you're sitting in the remotest part of India or whether you're sitting in a major urban city, actually. Already work from home, you might have seen many companies are trying to move many of their employees work from home. So homes need to become smarter. And I'm also believing that there is going to be a Netflix moment for energy in the homes. What I mean by that is with the metering available, digital metering available, you will be as a consumer able to pick what kind of electricity you want at what points in time, and when do you want to start your air conditioner, when do you want to start your washing machine. I think this is not far away. In my view, I can see it happening in the next 2 to 3 years, actually. So I believe India is ripe, and India's moment of Netflix in energy is already there at our doorsteps. We need to encash that, and this is the right moment in my view, actually. We've also seen that cloud to home solutions are emerging, and many homes are becoming producers of renewable energy. So I think this is going to be a huge market, and I think given the fact that currently the discoms are under huge stress, how we address that is one part. But I think when we evolve out of this crisis, I think you will see a new breed of discoms who will not only capture value, but also try to consolidate and build value around consumers and make this even more attractive in the next 10, 15 years, actually. The last two parts I wanted to share is on the mobility part. I believe, electrification is the key. And I think electrification, especially even in construction industry, is going to be a big game changer, and that's something which already is going to propel. I'm not a big fan of lithium ion, given the fact that lithium ion, even though it is 10 times lower in the last 5 years, we have seen a drop in prices. I believe we need very strong R&D to look at all our different other options like flow batteries and chemical storage batteries and kind of options, actually. I'm very bullish on hydrogen as an alternative fuel, both in mobility and even probably in using in large storage plants or EV plants that might be an opportunity for us. So these are all, we have to leapfrog as India, and I think we have a huge research potential here as well, and that's also what I felt that government should proliferate more R&D, actually. I mean, you look at after World War II, what Germans did to the automotive industry, and I think we have a great opportunity to do that now for the energy sector. If we can only encash this opportunity, I think, it's a great moment for us in my view, actually. Lastly, moving on to agriculture. I think food security is a big question, and I think this is something we would all have realized in the last 4 or 5 weeks. And we have more than 120 million people stranded on the different parts of the city. But I also believe that when we try to address food security, when we try to address food waste and food loss, the energy footprint is going to expand, and I think one of the areas where we all need to be aware of it is that in the sustainability challenge that we have on climate change, methane is an underspoken, underestimated part of the polluter. And the milk industry is the largest methane polluter in the universe actually. So how do we address this is something we need to think about it actually, because this is another area where we need to be aware of that India's freshwater are actually being used today to grow rice, paddy, and wheat and sugar, and probably all of that we ended up with a lot of diabetics, and diabetes is also one of the big challenges for the COVID-19 actually. So people would make future choices of what they want to eat and when they want to eat and how they want to eat. And all of this is going to put a huge stress on the energy footprint of this country, actually. Fresh water, I've already said some examples. Actually, we need to look at how do we use or redirect the fresh water to better usage and better deployment of that. And then I think lastly, what we're going to see in agriculture is that, we have done remarkably well with the ENAM markets in the last 4 weeks. I think the electronic national agriculture markets, more than doubled in the last 5 weeks, actually. Sometimes I wonder, we in India do better in crisis, actually. And I think we should not wait for another crisis when it comes to, agriculture. E-commerce, I think this is going to stay, and you're going to see propelling growth in e-commerce over the next 4 or 5 years, in my view. And all of this is going to drive the capacities for warehouses and cold rooms, actually. One of the biggest challenges that we see today, I mean, even in curbing the pandemic, is our vegetable markets. Be it in Maharashtra, be it in Delhi, be it in Chennai, most of the vegetable markets that we have here, they need to be reformed actually, and I don't see. I'm a strong person who would prefer to do pack houses in the farm end. I know it may put a different structure on the energy footprint, but remember that we have microgrid opportunity with solar, and you can get into some kind of a zoning category for these kind of agriculture areas where you don't have electricity, and allow agriculture to zone and use alternative technologies like microgrids actually. So all in all, I think there is great work to be done, and I'm very optimistic of the future. And I think as we come out of this crisis, I believe India must not use this crisis, and I think we will kind of reinvent ourselves as a nation. And we have a great opportunity, in my view. I think I will kind of stop here, I still believe before I conclude, energy efficiency can only boost economies quickly, and if we actually embrace it post crisis, it will only have a long lasting benefits for the country, for the companies, for the individuals. So I'll stop here and maybe look at Kiran to take some questions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. That was an excellent address. I think you have covered all aspects of energy efficiency or energy consumption areas, gave your thoughts on where you see the next set of movement or the change would come as far as efficiency in the country is concerned. Now, for all participants, may I request you to kindly type in your questions in the Q&A window. I'll start with some of the questions that have already come in, but for other participants, please do type in your questions in the Q&A text box, and we will certainly have them discussed. Sir, one of the first questions that has come in is, what are the new models you foresee as far as energy efficiency implementation is concerned? We have been talking about ESCOs and a few other models earlier, but in this post-COVID situation, do you see remote monitoring picking up? Do you see the common utilities and supply picking up, district heating and cooling picking up? So this is one question that came up on what new models of efficiency do you see coming up?
I think that technology will become a resource liberating force, and in my view, we would probably see newer business models emerging. For example, managing a hospital in a cloud with telemedicine and doctors sitting at home. I mean, this was never thought of, right? So similarly, in energy efficiency, I mean, today already in some parts of our business, we are already controlling chillers sitting in Chennai, and supermarkets sitting in Chennai. So I think online monitoring is set to double, triple. It's going to be a big boom for online monitoring in the next couple of days. But I also believe that there will be still opportunities for an asset as a service. I mean, at least the next 1 to 2 years, you will see a lot of companies experimenting OPEX versus CAPEX models, because there would be hesitancy on companies to spend the CAPEX. So I would see more and more OPEX model emerging. And as many of you already know, energy efficiency as a service, cooling as a service, compressed air as a service, so these things you will start to see. Unfortunately, one thing we must recognize, that many of the startups with at least with whom I have been talking to the last many years, we are not really looking at a collaborative effort. We have great minds in energy space, but they are kind of elderly people above 45 years of experience. There have been some companies who have really understood the game to innovate in the energy space, and so that the young boys in the early 20s collaborating with the domain experts, these kind of companies have really started to find ways and means of coming about substantial new business models actually. So I believe more and more promoting more and more startups in the space would really allow us to experiment more and more new business models.
Thank you, sir. The next question is on access to finance. In this post-lockdown situation where the focus of the industries, particularly the small and medium enterprises, being on business continuity and other pressing challenges, would that hinder finance being made available for energy efficiency? And what are your thoughts on how to make it more available or accessible?
I think, firstly, in my own view, actually, the cost of capital in India is very high. I mean, you look at a situation where we are sitting now, despite economy at completely lockdown condition, our interest rates are still at 6% or 6.5% actually. And one of the reasons why in many economies, at least mature economies where energy efficiency has proliferated, is that the cost of capital has to be addressed. This is true for energy efficiency, and it's also true for MSMEs actually. So this is a larger problem on the economy and not specific to an energy efficiency part, in my view. And of course, I've already said that MSMEs need to be supported, and they are the backbone and the pillar of this economy actually. So I'm sure that there would be some package in the works where the stimulus would provide that. But having said that, I also believe that when we come up with these stimulus packages, energy efficiency should be made as an integral part of the stimulus packages, and only that way we can actually solve the balance that we need between lives and livelihoods in the future. Otherwise, we end up fixing one and not fixing the other.
Thank you, sir. I think there have been a lot of questions on net zero buildings, decentralized power generation, and why that is not getting promoted. The question is, how can we promote more and more distributed power generation? How can we promote buildings with integrated renewable energy generation? And with the current state of the affairs at the DISCOMs, what do you think is required to promote more and more generation in buildings?
Of course, I can take a long shot at the second part of the question. I think we are anyway in crisis. So, of course, I'm not the finance minister, but I'm kind of, giving an idea here that, we should simply write off all that we have as bad loans in the DISCOMs and start afresh. Simply because we are not going to fix this. It's going to take a long haul for us to fix, actually. It's easier for us rather to go to the mint and start printing to save this economy, and that would be my approach in the very short term actually. Of course, for any business model there has to be a customer first. So there are multiple technologies, but there are no customers actually. So I think we need to look at what technologies can be applied on what what customers actually. So I believe that when you get into different pockets of India, I mean, you take an example like Leh Ladakh, actually, in the northern part of Kashmir, on the north eastern part of Kashmir. There is a great opportunity for microgrids. It is just that, we need to capitalize on them. And given the fact that, we have big data, and given the fact that we have demonstrated, despite the 9 o'clock Prime Minister's call that the grid has not been affected, I think the data science and the insights that we can get out of data science today is far more than what it was 5 years back, actually. So, coexisting with microgrids, main grids, I think it's doable. I think we need to move one layer higher on the technology side, in my view, and embracing these kind of technologies is only going to long-term benefit us.
Yes, sir. The next question on buildings, I think more questions were coming in terms of with more and more people preferring to work from home and companies also preferring that. Is this whole discussion in India about the commercial building energy efficiency overrated? Should we start looking at residential building energy efficiency now? And what are the things that should be done, considering that more and more people would start working from home?
I think once we get the pricing right for energy, I'm a very strong. I have a very strong opinion on. Today industry is paying a higher price, but of course this is a sensitive political discussion. Agriculture is priced, and then you subsidize agriculture for industry, and also the lower strata, power consumers have been given a subsidy. My own take is, you should allow energy to find its own price, and in the longer run, it will be like data, what we pay for data today, actually. The more and more we try to control it, the more and more we make mess out of it, because financially you can't manage, this. So somewhere we need to start transferring money with the right prices of energy to the farmers and allow them to pay and consume electricity as much they want. So I think it's an arbitrage model that we need to work with, and I don't think this is an easy fix. This requires a lot of political will, to change the equation. Of course, residential would consume more, and I mentioned that already, right? We should have a new electricity act, and I believe, I've been telling this to Venkatagiri also, that the cost of electricity will be zero, not very far away, but we will all pay for, like how we pay for Netflix, as we use, as we pay. So I think we will move into that. I think many parts of Europe is already into that mode, and I don't think India is far away from that, actually. And once we all have these technology meters of energy meters in our homes, we have that capability, and that's also why I believe a company like Amazon is going to be the biggest disruptor of energy in the future.
Thanks, sir. Thank you. On the IoT, there are two sets of questions that we see more coming up, sir, on the IoT and automation part. One, how do we justify the benefits of automation and IoT, particularly for small and medium enterprises, because the investments there are not coming in, while the large companies have seen the benefit, the small ones have not seen it yet. So how do we convince the small and medium enterprises to adopt more of this very soon? And the second part of the question in IoT is, do you think there will be a lot of job losses that might happen with more automation coming in? And is any specific skilling or reskilling that is required to keep the current energy efficiency jobs relevant in the new scenario?
So, there are too many questions in one question, and if I've got it right, let me pick the first two, and then see if I've missed, I can bring me back, actually. I think it is a fact that, we would see IoT penetrating much more for two reasons. One is we all are moving to real-time world. I mentioned earlier that 5G is going to be the umbilical cord of this world, actually. And the speed of 5G is kind of more or less like 10 times the speed of 4G from a technology perspective. Doesn't matter whether you buy a Nokia 5G or you buy a 5G from Huawei in China. More or less, they are all at the same speed, actually. Now, you have already social distancing challenges. There's no other way without going into IoT you can run your production 3 shifts. Of course, there will be some job loss in that, but in order to actually run your IoT solution, you may need different skill sets. You may need, a cloud-based software, a cloud-based entity which manages your factory. So instead of you paying someone who, for 3 shifts monitoring sitting in the factory, you're going to pay a service provider who provides you that service actually. So the gentleman or the lady who was in charge of managing that domain expertise, instead of working for the company that is asking whether IoT is needed, would be probably working for a software company and supporting the cloud with the data science and insights that are needed to control that machine or that factory actually. So it's neighbors envy, owners pride. So the money flow will change, but the jobs will get recreated, and there will be some imbalance in demand and supply as far as jobs are concerned. That is inevitable, actually. Having said that, I can give you our own story on robotics, actually. Robots does not automatically reduce electricity. I mean, we also have factories with robots, and what we have seen is that you cannot switch off the lights in the night and continue to operate a shift with robots. It will never work. Simply because you also need surveillance, you also need a lot of other things actually. So I think we are going to see more and more automation. We are going to see more and more technology moving into the cloud. This is inevitable. I think the pace at which we move and the pace at which these technologies overtake us is a question mark. And that's where I think India has an opportunity, because on one side we have the necessary experts and the technology available. On the other side, we need the regulator to push us in a direction where we can embrace these technologies much faster. So I fully agree that on one side we will have some pain, but to a long-term gain, this is probably a better path to take in the future.
Thank you, sir. I think the next set of questions are on e-mobility, sir. One part of the question was, would the current drop in oil prices reduce the rate at which the e-vehicles were being adopted in countries? And second, particularly if we are looking at significant uptake of e-vehicles in India, what do you think should be the approach, both from the government and from the industries?
I think from a sustainability point of view, the initiatives government has taken, in my view, would be irreversible. I think finding money would be the priority for the government, actually. On oil, it's very difficult to put a bet on any commodity. It's extremely difficult. And I'm not in the business of, pricing commodities, unfortunately. You never know what could happen to oil, because, the geopolitical shift can play a lot on this. But I think India should really do the technology diplomacy. And what I mean by technology diplomacy is that, we should use the IT skills that we have and really arbitrage and build a very strong geopolitical relationship to the countries. I think we have done pretty well on this in the last many years, in the last 4 or 5 years. So I think we should use technology diplomacy and try and mitigate when it comes to commodities. This is very difficult to predict where will oil will be 1 month from now or 5 months from now.
Yes, sir. And there are several questions related to your own operations, sir. As a leading technology company, what is Danfoss learning during lockdown? And how do you plan to take it forward? How do you see the future of industrial operations happening, particularly with social distancing and with lesser workforce at operations? Would there be a possibility of going back to the previous normal, or what do you think would be the new normal altogether?
Well, I think, I'll kind of give you a very general perspective of the industry that I'm living in, and not specific to the company, which I would like to avoid. What we have seen in the last 4 or 5 weeks is that, we rely on customers, and this industry relies on customers. So we are kind of confronted by 3 kinds of customers. Customer A, who's impacted quite a lot, and he probably would take anywhere between 9 months to 12 months to really stand up and again walk. The second kind of customers we have seen is that, probably there is a short-term challenge, but in 3 to 6 months, we will probably see recovery back, but it will not be at the same level at what it was pre-COVID. And then we see another set of customers where nothing has happened to them, their business as usual actually. And we also see a fourth category where suddenly somebody was running at 40 kilometers is now running at 400 kilometers. So this is the kind of scenario we see actually. So aggregated is very difficult to predict because each business may have a different set of customers in the four categories actually. Overall, I don't think it would take a long time to go back to what we were at pre-COVID. But I think what we can actually all of us believe is that if we can get more innovative and create new ideas, given the limitations of COVID and the fact that you don't have a vaccine for the next 2 to 3 years, I think the history has shown in 2008. Companies who have been far more innovative have actually, created a CAGR which is unbelievable compared to companies who have not been innovative actually. So we want to be probably optimistic and stay optimistic, in that path that we want to actually relive another century.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for an excellent start for the distinguished lecture series today. For your address, I think the questions are still coming in on variety of the topics that you have already touched. I think they would have to look at the video again, in my opinion, to see the kind of wide-ranging topics and areas that you have looked at. You have suggested several inputs and thoughts. With this, I'd like to thank you for your address, Mr. Ravichandran. Thank you very much for speaking to us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all. Thank you all the participants who have joined us today, and look forward to meeting you all in the forthcoming distinguished lecture series. Thank you.